Great. I want to go to callers. People really want to talk to you, Dr. Welner. Jeweler Jeff. We call him Jeweler Jeff in Cleveland. Hey, Jeweler.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for taking my call. This subject is so important to me, and it's been addressed and not answered on TV so many times when the question's asked, how are young people today attracted to people like ISIS? And the truth is that we need to look in the mirror and say, what kind of a society have we raised in not educating our children, not showing them opportunity, but more important, not giving them any sense of meaning in life? America doesn't mean anything. Religion doesn't mean anything. You name it, Boy Scouts, anything that might have given our children meaning in life besides just stuff has been put down and leaves a lot of people very, very empty and hopeless.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
And I think they see past all the bad stuff that you've rightly mentioned because they just see, wow, this has meaning. I can attach myself to something, meaningful.
Dr. Welner.
Jeff, I really appreciate your point. I think the prescription from a leadership perspective, that were I to be advising the White House on this, what I would tell them is, whether this be for the rest of your administration or whether it be the next president, Democratic or Republican, we need a pluralistic nationalist. We need someone who is not only proud of American exceptionalism, unabashedly proud, in the same way that, for example, Harper is in Canada, who is a proud Canadian, but completely pluralistic. There is absolutely no intolerance in Canada to everybody observing as they wish, and yet they have their own restive rejectionist. Pluralistic nationalism doesn't have to be a Democratic or Republican concept, but the importance of this is we have to teach Americans and the Arab world what Americans have done for the Arab world. Americans have died for the Arab world. Americans have died for Muslims. Americans liberated Bosnia. Teach American Muslims how Americans have been murdered trying to help Muslims. This never gets any emphasis. And the exceptionalism projects within so that people can be enthusiastic, and if they want to serve, they serve their country. They can be attracted to a national ideal instead of a messianic ideal, which I think Jeff has raised an interesting point. What's the countervalence to a young person who wants to believe in something and see something igniting when there is a national identity that gets projected that's constantly apologizing for everything, even in the face of how selfless a nation we are? That's got to change.
Good. All right, let me pick up on Jeff's point. I'll keep Jeff on to countervalence. That's nice. I was thinking about Neil Ferguson's book on civilization. He said, civilizations have their codes. They have their canons, their basic works, by means of which they introduce their citizens to the things that matter, the things which define the country or the culture. You're talking about what we need to instruct in, Arab countries. What about in our own country? I mean, I find the neglect of the teaching of American history, American ideas, American ideals, to be one of the worst things we're doing because we don't make any attachments. I'm all for the truth, by the way. I want to tell the story, the American story, unvarnished. But, if you don't give people good attachments, they're going to get bad attachments, aren't they, Dr. Welner?
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We have had our growing pains as a society, but as we watch the society of the purified Islam by the book, beyond the beheadings, what we are also seeing is slavery. And when you consider the pains that we have had in our relations between minorities and others, it does remind me of Muhammad Ali's old line when he went back to fight George Foreman in Zaire. You know what he said when he got off the plane? I sure am glad my great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy caught that ship.
Yeah.
We may not be perfect, but we are way ahead of the rest of the world in how we treat each other.
Yeah, and shouldn't be embarrassed to say so, right? I mean, this is the problem. I mean, when I go into the classrooms, I still do. Kids say, gee, you really like this country. Why? And I said, hasn't anybody made the case for it? The answer is no. No. All the way down the line. The college professors, we know what they say. High school teachers imitate the college professors. We even get some of this in middle school, So who's to say a good word for this republic into which you were born?
I think a lot can be said for the United States military, and I'm not even speaking about the guns that they tote. There's so much humanitarian export in the United States military that in the reintegration, even in downsizing of the military, I hope a lot of those folks go into academia, because those are the people whose life experience needs to be imparted, as opposed to professors who did not work in the real world and take their bitterness over not having achieved in an America of opportunity and pass it on to students who can't discern bitterness when they see it.
Dr. Welner, someday in New York, the city of my birth, Brooklyn, I will buy you a drink or a cup of coffee and tell you about my efforts as Secretary of Education to get retired military into the schools, and how I was fought tooth and nail by the teacher organizations who said these majors and so on didn't have the qualifications to be in the schools. We'll talk about that sometime.
Well, we'll figure it out on the back of a napkin.
That's it. That's exactly right. I will be the one taking notes. Let's go to Chuck in Jackson, Georgia. Go ahead, Chuck. You're on with Dr. Welner. Thanks, Jeff.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Welner.
Good morning, sir.
Dr. Welner, the first time I heard you was on Bill Bennett's program. This is last year, and I believe that it started off with Islam is as Islam does. And it got me thinking, and you hear a lot of times the radio pundits always talk about radical extreme Islam and this and that. But the thing that struck me, and it kind of struck me to the core, is that if an individual follows Islam and he follows it exactly to the T, he follows it to the letter, then a lot of things that are happening, the beheadings, the taking of slaves, the forcing infidels to pay jizya, force them to convert, all these things have to come to fruition. And people do not understand in America exactly what's going to happen in the future or what's happening in the Middle East. And if they really understood it, I think it would terrify them.
Okay.
And I just wish that your message would be I guess, to different audiences, because Dr. Bennett's audience, I think, has a pretty good appreciation of it. However, the mainstream media, the people who listen to that, they do not. And if they heard just a bit of yours, I think it would open up so many eyes.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Doctor.
Well, I think that, first of all, Chuck, thank you very much for those kind words. What I wanted to just pick up on what you said briefly is the idea that there are people who adhere to their Islamic faith, and they're able to separate the beheadings and the enslavement and to say, hey, that belonged in the 7th century, and I don't have to follow that. And I don't have to follow a political Islam that says that we need Sharia, and I can go to the mosque and I can be devout. And I think that it is incumbent upon our America to basically say, and some countries have already done this, hey, listen, you want to come here and practice freely? That's great. Come on, be who you want to be. You want to use your mosque to plot, to overthrow our way of government? Get out. Go somewhere else. That's not why everybody came here. We all came here to live together. That needs to be done in our communities, and it needs to be done in prisons, because the recruitment to ISIS is not that successful, but it's picking up on the alienated and disaffected in the United States, and that's a huge problem in prisons, where you have radical inmates essentially dictating who the imams are and essentially picking up the dead-enders who are not resilient. So it happens in the community, it happens in the prisons, and we can do a far better job in terms of enforcement in protecting this from seeding the kind of inspiration that for someone will say, hey, I've seen God. I'm drunk on God. I'm going to the caliphate. It's my turn.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to leave it there. We could do a whole show. Maybe we will someday, if Dr. Welner consents. Thank you, Michael Welner. Thank you very, very much. Delighted to have you back.
It's my pleasure, and I'd like to invite your listeners to please participate in the depravity research at www.depravitystandard.org, so we can actually define an evidence-based standard of even war crimes. If we deal with evidence, then we can define things and see things as they are.
We will put a link up on the website, and you saw how seriously your words are taken. Chuck quoted you from a year ago. So thank you, sir.